Hi, welcome back to Live Healthy Now. I hope you're having a great week. And I'm so looking forward to sharing today's podcast with you because I have a really fantastic guest, someone who's going to bring, I think, a very different perspective to how you can build some healthy habits. And something that I'm sure many of us can quite easily tap into, which is what we're all about here at Live Healthy Now. So I'm going to introduce you to Clara Heimerdinger, who is a comedy producer, booker and promoter. And she's been working in the comedy industry for around 20 years and has so much experience of hosting these events and linking them to well-being. So I'd love to welcome you to the podcast, Clara, and just get to know you a little bit more. So if you want to start by just telling us what your most impactful healthy habit is.
Thank you so much for having me, and great to see you, Nicola. Let's kick off with my most healthy habit. I think it's a pretty simple one. It involves, with a lot of work being quite busy at the moment in my business, it involves just putting my computer away, my phone away, taking a walk in nature, sometimes as simple as kind of 20 minutes, ideally locally. And to be honest, those moments, often morning time, before the not before the world wakes up, because comedy is quite a nighttime business, but you know, before everything hits a crazy time in the inbox, that has been really, really helpful, especially these past few months. Found a lot of time for that in lockdown, because lockdown almost made you take your 1 hour government approved walk every day, and then it drifted away again, but now it's back. So yeah, definitely nature, no phones, no screens, you know, just being able to soak up some air. And I'd say that's a healthy habit that can just be easily done, because it's just have a little walk. So yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I love walks too. So do you literally not listen to anything? You're just present, hearing whatever's around you on the walk?
So I've tended to mix that up a little bit. Occasionally I found it really great to listen to a podcast or some music, but I would say often I'm more drawn to a bit of silence. I mean, I suppose it's never silent because there are birds, there are dogs, there are trees, there are people passing by. And yeah, I think because it is relatively short, you know, it's always under an hour. So I'm not too worried there about getting too bored. And I'm quite clear that the rest of my day will be quite noisy as well. So, you know, whether that is phone calls with clients or actually producing backstage at a gig. So I think, yeah, that's been really good fun. Maybe a cup of tea to carry around with me. And I'm not, yeah. And, you know, it's not happening 7 days a week, but it's certainly started creeping in a bit more and a bit more. So that's the start of a healthy habit that hopefully will get extended soon, even in the winter months. So, yeah.
Definitely. I must say I do love a nice fresh winter walk, especially if it's a sunny day and it's nice and frosty and you're just wrapped up. And that's something I haven't tried, is doing just the walk without podcast alongside, because I do wear my headphones and listen to podcasts every time I walk. But I did have a conversation with somebody recently about the value of just being present when you're walking, and really taking in whatever's around you, like you said, just acknowledging people on the walk or hearing the sounds, if you're lucky enough to have, you know, the nature sounds like birds and so on. So yeah, that's really great. And just getting outside at the start of the day as well is definitely a huge benefit to your mental and physical health. So I love that you're building that up to a sustainable habit.
That's great. Yeah, so, very good to do it too.
Yeah, I do, not every morning like you, but I do try to get out, even if it's only 10, 15 minutes before I do the school run. I like to get out, and I'm a proper power walker, so very fast as well. So I'm really looking forward, as I said in the intro, to finding out more about the power of comedy and laughter on your well-being. And it is something that I know a little bit about because I've been very curious about this in the past. So when we met, a couple of months ago, I was really intrigued about what you do. And obviously we've had a couple of conversations already on this. So I'm really excited for you to share a bit about your niche, because we haven't had any other guest so far on the podcast that does anything like what you do. And that's why I wanted to bring you on. So just to get started, let's dive into what it is you actually do, if you can share that, Clara.
Yeah, of course. So the company that I head up is called Nice and Spiky Comedy. And what's really fun about it is many things, including all the wonderful comedians presented. But I'd say what's really fun is that it does have a few different strands and some different diverse elements. But the main ones really are, it's either we're provisioning for a venue or a club or a hotel who would like to stage a comedy night, and that might be sometimes for a group of members, it might be for a group of residents at the hotel, co-working spaces often, want to bring people together. And so those are kind of really fun live club nights that we will put together, usually on a semi-regular basis. So it might be something like every 2 months in the same place, adding new venues all the time, which is especially exciting after 2 years of kind of weirdness. And then the other strand would be for private parties, businesses, corporates. So what's brilliant about all that is it's fairly wide ranging. I mean, comedy does go well in many, many different occasions. I'd say almost all occasions. And when it comes to private events, it's so broad. It could be an award ceremony that needs a host, because how better way to make listening to a group of business people talk about award winners, to kind of bring that to life, like to add the humour is really, really important, and to make it kind of go with a bit of a bang. But it isn't just awards. There's also kind of the concept of a comedy club in an office, for example. It hasn't been done hugely before, but why not be able to kind of bring comedy into workspaces, especially with a kind of semi-return to the office for lots of key businesses. We also can partner with businesses for special events, like maybe a summer party or Christmas party, a charity fundraiser. So lots and lots of different elements that corporates or indeed any kind of private event. So it really could just be, a group of friends meeting for a big birthday. And and all of that is super fun, keeping me super busy. But at the heart of it, it is my team making sure that the client gets the best comedians and the most appropriate comedians. And the reason that we kind of call ourselves bookers, promoters and producers is that, stage one is booking the actual talent for the event, but then also turning up at the venue and making sure a really good job is done of the event being managed, because that's a really important part. So lots of fun in different places, and 1 minute Thursday night it might be a charity show, and then Friday it might be an award ceremony, and then Saturday it might be a hotel. So lots going on at different places, which is great.
So the reason I wanted to have you talk about this today is because of the link between comedy and what it's supposed to do is obviously make us laugh, but all of the other things that it brings. So what benefits does comedy entertainment offer to an individual?
So I think what's really interesting about this is that we can all take it so easily for granted, because I hope we all love to laugh. And if we don't know we do, we're just doing it and enjoying it without realising, I guess, maybe watching a funny film or something on TV or down the comedy clubs. And I think what's so brilliant is it does go a lot deeper than that, and it genuinely can turn, I'm going to say a bad mood, a bad day, a bad week could be turned round in an individual's life with a couple of hours of proper laughter. It genuinely produces endorphins, so scientifically proven that the chemicals are released in the brain, simultaneously reducing stress. Again, all of this has been done in trials. It's not just some made up stuff to promote comedians to the world. So I'd say the wellbeing elements are very much stress reduction and boosting the immune system, reducing stress, releasing endorphins, and those real feel good. I sometimes equate it to how we feel after exercise, because I guess, similar chemicals released. that there's a real sense of absolute well-being, and it's pretty addictive, actually. I think those of us who work in it are kind of, you know, looking to get a little fix of laughter, but there's nothing dangerous about it. You can't sprain any ligaments, from what I can tell. So I think health benefits for wellness and well-being are really there. I just think not everybody knows it. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's a great explanation, because they were all things I was aware of as well. I mean, it's been cited as even being a pain reducer because of those endorphins that we release, isn't it? That it can, and research, as you mentioned, has shown that it does have an actual effect physiologically in our body. So you've got great mental health benefits, but you've also got a lot of physical health benefits as well. And you touched on something that I think is very fascinating as well, is about everybody can laugh. Not everybody might actually think they can laugh. And this is something I find really interesting and I guess fascinating, you know, us all obviously being humans, is that everybody has different laughs themselves. Some people make sound, some people don't. And some people, you know, have very different senses of humours as well. And I think that's what makes it accessible to everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so true. So that will always sort of shine out in a room full of people laughing. You will get some silent laughers, but they're still having a great time. You'll get some snorting, howling laughers. It's so accessible, and actually you could almost think that somebody who's quite quiet, reserved, maybe they're not into expressing themselves loudly, hasn't had a very good time watching a funny film or a funny comedy show. But actually it's incredible. You could get the best feedback from people who've actually sort of sat there, you know, maybe a bit back row, a bit reserved, maybe a bit nervous, because comedy is very live and in the moment, and we've all heard of audience and performer interaction happening a lot in rooms. I think it's so exciting to think that it can still be pleasing people, even if it's not so to speak, which is so good. And yeah, so it's really is accessible, isn't it? It's just we should all utilize it as much as possible, if it's that almost free and easy form of well-being. But easy to get lost a lot, maybe because well-being, more typically you might hear about sport and exercise and yoga. I mean, that's just from what I'm hearing a lot in my circles. I'm not too sure kind of what the general themes are in the world, but I do think you hear a lot about mindfulness, a lot about sit in a calm place and make sure you meditate and make sure you switch your phone off and take the walks. I'm not sure we've heard a lot about make sure you have a good laugh, because that can, and by the way, the other thing I forgot to say earlier, it's very obvious, but I'm quite keen to point it out. It's you can't be in a bad mood while you're laughing. So because you're so, it's like that one, it's that focus, isn't it? So it's not to be down on meditation, by the way, which I know absolutely has its place. But often I feel like when I try and meditate, I can often be so distracted, because it's just you're clearing of your mind. And what if you can't really clear your mind? Well, then you observe your thoughts, and what are those thoughts, and are they negative or are they positive? But with laughter, because physiologically somebody or something has made you crack up, you can't be thinking about anything else at the same time. So you're physically and mentally totally in the zone, which I think is so interesting. You know, I can be doing 20 lengths in the swimming pool, but still having, you know, some really quite serious thoughts about work or stuff going on in my life, but I can't be thinking that while I'm laughing. So I think that's definitely worth bearing in mind.
Absolutely. That is so powerful, and you're so right. And part of what this podcast is about is opening the door to all of the different elements of being healthy and well, because there are so many things that touch us in our lives. Pretty much everything that touches us in any way is going to impact how we feel, which in turn is going to impact our health and overall well-being. And for some people, things like meditation or other kinds of mindfulness activities just isn't right for them. And that's what I'm trying to show is, you know, there are so many different ways you can boost your health and well-being. And laughter and well, I want to come on to this because it's not just about laughter either. It's feelings of joy, smiling. Those things also contribute very similarly to laughter as in terms of what we're talking about here with comedy. But one of the things that I'm really focusing on in my coaching and business is about happiness. You know, we're all striving to feel happy in our lives. That's the ultimate aim for most people. When you say, you know, what do you want to get out of your life? Well, I want to feel happy. I want to get to the end and know I've lived a happy life. So, you know, with what you do with comedy, I'm sure there's obviously so many different types of comedy. As we said, people have very different senses of humour. But what ways can comedy boost our happiness? Obviously, them endorphins are a big part of that, aren't they? But are there any other ways that it helps to make us feel happy?
So I would definitely say it instills, as long as you're watching, listening or absorbing comedy with at least one other person, and that it doesn't have to be done this way, but I'd say it's highly recommended. It absolutely bonds you with that other person or that group of people, and it sent a sense of community and well-being and happiness together is absolutely incredible. Again, we will probably take it for granted. We'll go down to a comedy club on a Saturday night, celebrate a friend's birthday, and it will just be a really great, fun, you know, drunken night out watching comedians. But actually what it's done is kind of one step further than what it seems it's done, because it's kind of created a sense of community in that room. It's also created something incredibly unique, and I'm a really big kind of advocate of this sense of what live comedy is, and this is obviously especially watching it in a club theatre or any type of venue, is it's a once in a lifetime experience, because so much of good comedy comes out of the moment and improvised in the room. I'm sure, you know, we've all been there, we've seen somebody on the front row be talked to, it's happened to most of us. So I think what's really special is that when that group of people leave the venue, not only have they laughed and really had the sense of well-being, the happiness is also added on to the fact that they can chat about it the day after, they can continue taking the mick out of each other if there was any running themes with themselves, they can talk about what happened in the room, you know, oh wow, did you see when Gary tried to heckle that headliner and how that went wrong, or, you know, stuff like that. And I think much as other art forms are really valuable, there's you know, incredible, you know, things you can see in music and film and theatre, I think there is this thing about live comedy where it's just a magical couple of hours with absolute, almost who knows where this night is going to go, who knows what's going to happen next. Cinema just doesn't have that, does it? Because we're all sitting in a room and it's communal, but we're watching something that is fully pre-recorded. So I would say that also is added on to if you're watching a funny TV programme or film, or listening to something on the radio or podcast with a friend or family member, because the brilliance of laughing with someone else is the infectiousness as well. I think that's the word, infectiousness. So your laughter's almost bouncing off each other. That definitely creates happiness in the moment and joy. It's also possible to get that oneself alone, but the only thing I would say, and I've noticed this even myself working in comedy, trying to have, you know, some time just watching a really fun show like BBC Live at the Apollo, I probably wouldn't laugh out loud as much when I was watching it on my own than if I was watching it with someone else, which is quite interesting. Some people might feel differently about that, and actually that's quite a personal taste thing as well. Someone might just want to cheer themselves up watching some YouTube videos on a random evening because they need a bit of a comedy hit, and they might just quite enjoy that laughter. I personally think it's just so much enhanced, shall we say, by being a team thing. Yeah,
and you're right, the social aspect does play such an important role because you're engaging with those other people that you're sharing that experience with. And one of the things that I'd read about was that when you are in that situation and you're very present, you touched on this before, you know, you're immersed in it and your mind is fully thinking only about what's happening in the comedy you're watching and being part of that community with others, your fight or flight mode is switched off, so you aren't in that hyper stressed state, which many of us can be in, when we're constantly thinking about work or what's on social media or what we've got to do when we get home later and sort the kids out or the dishes or whatever. So yeah, I think that the community piece is a really important part. And with what you do with the organisation of events for a lot of businesses, just talk to me about the importance of like that social aspect with the businesses, how they're bringing the teams together, and why do they think that comedy is, you know, something worth investing in for their employees and building that team culture?
Yeah, that's a really great question, actually. So the way I saw it the most highlighted was probably, even though I was quite aware of it before 2020, I think these last 2 years has been a really great example and very current of kind of why does comedy matter so much to teams and staff and HR managers, and why has it worked so well? I wouldn't have said, if you'd asked me in the March 2020 of lockdown 1 that it was going to go this way, but this is how it went, and I think it was really brilliant. What happened was that if you start it from a basis of kind of how it worked well on Zoom, and then I'll tell you a bit about in the real world. So what was happening on Zoom or other platforms are available is teams would be coming together for having to work virtually and remotely, obviously all from home, for a really long period of time. I think in some cases sounds like it's been 2 years going on 3 years sort of thing. So anyway, and what was happening was that some great entertainment and team building activities were being provided, and not to criticise those at all, because they definitely had a place. A lot of them were kind of around quizzes, some were around kind of discos. There was a lot of like really fun stuff where I think cocktail making kits or, you know, stuff could get posted to people's houses, or gingerbread house making. So all of that was working really well. But then what we were finding is when we came in with comedy, which was kind of in the April of 2020 and then just rolled, and certainly by Christmas you can imagine people were crying out for something they could do differently, is that the sort of feedback we were getting was that comedy could be quite active and passive all at once, but mainly that it was, so you didn't have to kind of be really involved, like, oh right, I'm being asked to stir some drinks together and then drink them and, you know, get this kit. You could literally be sat on your sofa or at your desk. You could get other people in your household involved if you wanted to, as long as they were over 18, obviously, because we did try and provide entertainment that felt very comedy club-like. What the feedback was that essentially, because people as a team were laughing together but apart, but still together, and it was very much cameras on, mics on, you know, just imagine lots and lots of little faces and little squares. It was just so unique, and I think people were a little bit quizzed out and a little bit zoomed out, and Zoom fatigue was a real thing, because essentially it was us bringing professional comedians who really, like, they're the top of their game. They know exactly how to deliver jokes in this very strange new world, which is down a screen from their houses. And I think, I mean, we were getting incredible kind of like, wow, this felt like a comedy club, but the comedy clubs are closed, so this is the next best thing. We were getting feedback saying it's the best Zoom call people had ever been on. It's also important to note that it wasn't just someone speaking at a group of, say, you know, a team of 50 accountants from Cheshire and being it wasn't fully passive. I suppose what I mean by that is where people wanted interaction, that was happening. And there is nothing funnier and more uplifting than a group of accountants seeing a couple of key people in the team, obviously the chatty ones, the ones who wanted to be spoken to, having a chat with those comedians. And obviously it's not my job to recreate it or to make it funny, so you'll have to take my word for it. But some of the stuff that came out in those moments was just so special, because we've all had the moments where it's like, oh, it's hilarious, somebody's cat is walking across the keyboard. But that was happening in Zoom calls just day in, day out, because that's what happened in businesses for business to be maintained in meetings. But when you put a pro comedian in the mix, imagine the sorts of lines that they can really come out with, like, oh, what sort of hat do you think you're wearing? Oh, what's that poster on the wall? I want to discuss, you know, what you're cooking for your dinner while you're watching this Zoom comedy show. It was very, very unique. And I think if you then take that back into the real world, it's similar. It's very much how a group of people who are usually having quite, I'm going to say serious, not saying all work is serious, but obviously it's trying to keep a business afloat and, you know, meeting targets and going to meetings. when you then bring comedy into a team, and we're talking any size, literally 12 people up to 1,000, I guess, it's just so different. And also the office joker can stop being the office joker for the evening. The boss can sort of stop being the boss. Everyone can just sit and relax a little bit and really let the professionals work their magic, so to speak.
So yeah, it sounds like when you're bringing a team together, as you say, in very different sizes and types of organisations, it really has a part to play in that organisation's culture, you know, helping to bond people, to align people on what the values of that organisation are, and sharing those experiences. Because one of the things that I've heard about with comedy, and I think we've spoken about this separately before, is the power that it has to create like shared memories when you are experiencing that together. Is that something that you get in feedback as well from businesses who've hosted their events with you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just this kind of always, it's always a talking point in the office the day after, or, you know, if you're not all in the same office, you might be messaging each other. And what's really beautiful about that is it's exactly kind of a moment in time that was very, very unique, but that gets everybody together for even sometimes, you know, months later. I've had an amazing email from a client who was talking to me about a Christmas party this year and sort of said, look, that event you did do it for us on Zoom, and, you know, now we'd hopefully like to go back to kind of in-person comedy, but the event you did for us on Zoom was just something that everybody felt really, it's that strong emotion. It's not just the kind of mild, like, oh yeah, I enjoyed watching that movie, oh yeah, I went to see a live band, they played the hits, that was lovely. It's kind of that really like, wow, do you remember that person who went on third that night, and the way they weaved their story about driving their car home, and then Andrew was picked on at this point, or yeah, sort of some really funny, unique moments, often involving their staff. But it's not to say, you know, I have mentioned kind of comedians interacting with audience members a little bit. It's not to say that what we're trying to promote and produce is constantly this back and forth between the audience and the comic, but it's just that those are some of often the key moments where there just might be kind of 5 minutes of that out of a 1 hour show, you know, real improvised bits. Yeah, definitely team bonding, team socializing, something really different to just, you know, because everyone can just go down the pub for a work social, and that's fun and funny, but it's taken it to that next level really. And also just, you do get to sit back with a drink and relax during a comedy show, whereas in the pub you've got to be got to be on your A game, haven't you, to really get those conversations out. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I remember when I worked at Nike during the lockdown, we had the usual kinds of team activities like quizzes and bingo, and we did a couple of cook-alongs. But we did have a comedy event. I think we had 2 actually on Zoom as part of our quarterly sales conferences whilst we were working from home. And we had the comics come in and do the kinds of things you were talking about. And it was a really good experience. And, you know, for businesses who are building a wellness strategy and trying to make that a very integral part of their culture, it is about looking at, you know, a whole cross range of things that are going to support the team and support the business's success. And, you know, a happy team is a productive team, isn't it? So we've talked about all of those benefits of comedy and laughter on your well-being, and the endorphins helping to stimulate happiness and release stress and so on. So I think there's lots of win-wins all around there, isn't there? One of the things you mentioned earlier that I just want to go back to was obviously your focus is on live comedy, but you mentioned, you know, someone watching a YouTube, for example, at home. So if someone isn't able to attend live comedy, or they're not comfortable, for example, being in those situations, or being with a group like that, what other ways can somebody get these same benefits that we've mentioned? Yeah,
so I feel like it's so brilliant how much home entertainment there is and how much high quality stuff there is now. Definitely changed from 20 odd years ago. I'd say it's all about trying to get hold of free content. That could be YouTube, that could be BBC iPlayer, it could be different podcast platforms. obviously films, movies, and Netflix. And I think anything like that, radio as well is really great, especially Radio 4, 4 Extra, but there's some other stations as well that run comedy shows. I think it's having the access to it doesn't have to always involve going out to a comedy club or sitting in a group. You could do a watch along where some people are watching in their different houses and comparing notes later. You can watch with people in your home if you want to invite anyone over, and even solo is still really, really fun and really beneficial. And I think there's so much more of it than ever before, because comedians are now self-releasing their own special solo hours on YouTube. They're all free, of course, and so, you know, even though I mentioned Netflix and podcast platforms where often subscriptions needed, you can get so much for free, and it is so wonderful. And you're seeing some incredible stars who are just, already deciding to embrace what's digital, I guess, which is really important.
And one of the things you didn't mention that I've actually used before and had a lot of belly laughs with was reading. I'm not someone who would pick up a comedy book, but I was given a book a few years ago by Adam Kay, who you might know is ex-NHS doctor turned comedian and writer. I think he was writing in TV. I didn't know anything about him when I got this book given by a friend. And I read his book, and I remember being on a car journey reading it, and I literally was laughing out loud. And it was a combination of the laughter, but then there were moments of sadness, actually, because of what he writes about and shares. So if you haven't heard of him, have a look. I think he's got a few books. Yeah, Adam Kay. I have seen him live, actually, after lockdown. He did a live gig here in Newcastle, which was really good. So yeah, there's lots of different ways, very low cost or free, and obviously being together, watching things, you know, with your family or friends is a great way to get that impact. So again, we mentioned a little bit that laughter's brilliant and comedy is a great way to laugh. There's lots of other ways that you can maybe bring laughter into your life, but even just smiling and joy. And so I just want to call that out, you know, for people who think maybe this isn't quite for me, just to be aware of the power of smiling. You know, that the more you smile, the more it can actually lead to laughs. And as we've said, it doesn't have to be out loud laughs. There can be quiet internal laughs, mental laughs, so to speak, that you are still going to get all of those incredible benefits from. And it is really contagious, isn't it, when you are doing that with people as well. And something that I use in my coaching, and I came across this actually a couple of years ago, I think during one of the lockdowns when I was working at home, and I shared it as part of a wellbeing month that I was hosting from my team, was to, at the end of every day, have a think about 3 things that brought a smile or a laugh to you. Because when you start that, most people are really going to struggle. They're going to think, there was nothing that brought a smile to my face today. I didn't experience anything. But when you start to think about this daily, you prime your brain to look for things that make you smile and laugh. So you're actually ready for it. This is how your brain works without going into all of that detail. So that you start to see it more. And then the more you're looking for it and the more you're thinking about what brought smiles or laughs to you, the more you're feeling that joy and pleasure, and the more you're going to have those moments. So, yeah, I think that's something that's really beneficial for people to think about when we're talking about this whole topic of laughter and the joy that you can get from the happiness it brings. And they do say, don't they, Clara, that laughter is the best medicine.
Oh, it's such a great phrase, that. I love it. I use it all the time, actually. And just it is pretty unique and pretty magical. So sort of not taking it for granted and kind of appreciating how we feel after a good laugh. I think that, like, even just us today speaking, I think we're all going to notice it a little bit more because we've unpacked it a bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. So if someone's thinking, this is a bit of what I need in my life, this is the kind of healthy lifestyle I could envisage living, what would be something you could suggest they do in the next couple of days, like an easy little simple step to take?
So I'd say some of it I've mentioned already, like the kind of the books, the radio, the TV, the digital stuff is a nice quick access. And actually, if a walk or a drive or a journey of any sort, it could actually even be done around the home, like washing up or tidying, cleaning, is if at the moment there's not really a soundtrack to that, or you want to experiment with a different soundtrack, because at the moment you might have music or silence, then definitely try a comedy podcast or something audio comedy. And there are just hundreds out there. I could probably recommend about a dozen already, but yeah, there's just so many good ones. And if that doesn't make you laugh, don't worry, because everyone's got a different sense of humour. So then just move on and try another one. And like you said, somebody like Adam Kay is just so brilliant. And I'm sure there are audiobooks that he's narrated as well. I think that would be your kind of at home or easy win, because you could factor it into a daily thing or a weekly thing. But then take it a step further if you can, and don't be scared to hunt out a local comedy club. I think that I'm a firm believer in even the smallest nights that are called kind of open mic comedy can be so much fun. I think open mics are typically in the UK anything from free entry to £4 usually. They're really, really hopefully quite affordable. But I think what's great about any form of sitting in a room watching live comedy is just how it can, like we've said before, it will usually be on a weeknight evening, you know, a Monday to Wednesday. It will take you out of yourself a little bit or a lot. And if you want something bigger, then, you know, look up the bigger theatres, the bigger comedy clubs, the events and festivals. Typically, that's a Friday, Saturday night, go all out. If you're organising something for a friend's birthday or a special anniversary or a work event, then just think about comedy every time, because there is obviously a real cliche about just going out and having some drinks or getting some food. But I think the cherry on the cake, I think is that the saying? The cherry on the icing on the cake, and the cherry on top is definitely mixing that with a bit of live comedy. And I hope, I know not every town and village in the country has got a comedy club, but you know, let's hope that there's something local enough to get to for most people. And
you've given lots of suggestions there that anyone can access, regardless of where you live, your affordability, the time you have, your likes, you know, doing it alone or with teams. So lots of different ways. And I love the suggestion of popping a podcast on while you're doing the dishes or the ironing or the housework or a walk or something, and having a bit of a chuckle to yourself, seeing how it makes you feel. So I've got a question for you. I want to find out, what's your kind of iconic comedian or should I say like comedy memory that you've got?
Well, I'll go iconic comedian. I was really worried. I thought you were just about to ask me for a joke, and I thought, oh gosh, we get asked that all the time in comedy, and we've never got any jokes because they need to be told in context by professionals. And I would say iconic comedian, and also somebody that I was lucky enough to see live, would be Billy Connolly. He's still on everything, isn't he? All the documentaries are about him. There was one just a couple of weeks ago. I think he's a really true, original, super down to earth, really observational humour. Been going for years, as you well know, and I saw him at the Hammersmith Apollo in London. I think that was about 10-15 years ago. I know he doesn't perform live anymore, unfortunately, because he's not very well, but it was really special to watch him in a big theatre, you know, a couple of thousand people all laughing along. So yeah, I'd say often we as humans do tend to gravitate towards a certain type of humour, and then you can just, once you've unlocked that, you know who you love watching. So I could easily watch some old Billy Connolly DVDs and recordings, or listen to stuff he's done and still absolutely chuckle, which is great. So yeah, that's my very lucky to have seen the legend live and keeping those memories with me.
Oh, brilliant. I'll share you mine, and it's one that it doesn't matter how many times I've seen it, I do laugh out loud, and sometimes even cry with laughter. It's something I usually watch every Christmas with Dawn French, the Vicar of Dibley. I don't know if you've seen it, when she falls in this big puddle, and it's just so crazy because she's just walking along with her new gorgeous man, and she just jumps into this puddle and disappears, and it's just so silly and stupid, but it's just something that always makes me laugh. And yeah, that's my kind of humour. I do love to watch all of those old replays over Christmas, and yeah, the one when she dips the or there's the big chocolate fountain, and she's like, do you mind if I do, with her little kebab marshmallow thing, and then she just takes her whole self into the chocolate fountain and, you know, just licking and sucking all the chocolate. I'm like, yeah, that would be me. That's what I think, why I find it so funny. So yeah.
Oh, that's so great. So, you know, I don't think I've seen those. I don't think I've seen enough of Fiddler of Dibley. So there you are. I've got something on my list. For
you might be a
Christmas
little bit young. Yeah, that could be why. But give it a try. Oh, well, it's been lovely to chat, Clara, and it's definitely brought lots of smiles to my face, so I feel much happier after talking to you. And yeah, I hope if you're listening, it's brought a smile to your face as well, and you can see the value of trying to build this habit, which will just become part of how you enjoy being and living, you know, when you smile, laugh and feel that joy a lot more every day. So thanks again, Clara.
Thank you so much. That was a great laugh. Thanks, Nicola.
You're welcome.